Good evening and welcome to the virtual BAS. I'm Julia Rudo, Head of Communications at the BAS. We're really excited to have you join us this evening for the first ever virtual opening celebration of our Instagram gallery at the BAS Squared. The BAS Squared began in 2019 thanks to funding from the Knight Foundation. If you've not already done so, please follow the account on Instagram and explore our latest exhibition, the event we're here celebrating tonight, Tracey Moffatt's video series titled Montages, The Full Cut. These 8 films dating from 1999 to 2015 are part of the museum's collection and are being exhibited on this platform and in this particular way for the first time. I'd like to take this moment to thank our partners, the new Tropic, and Bruce, who have made this evening possible. Thank you for all of your support. Tonight's opening features a live talk followed by a Q&A. Please submit your questions using the chat or Q&A features here in Zoom. We're also now live streaming this event to YouTube, and we'll be monitoring any comments that come in there. Without further ado, I'm pleased to introduce co-founder of the New Tropic, Bruce Pinchbeck, and the exhibition's curator, our very own Leilani Lynch.
Hi.
Hi, everyone. It's a little different to do this without an audience in front of me, so feel free to go wild in the chat, and we have the Q&A open, I think, so we can get a little feedback of some sort.
Yeah.
I am so excited to join you at our virtual BAS, and I love your background. Very nice.
Had to bring the BAS to the virtual.
Awesome. But so we're here for BAS Squared. Explain what is BAS Squared, because currently, we can't go into museums, which is a bummer. How are you guys innovating? What is this?
Yeah, so as Julia briefly mentioned, the BAS Squared was an idea and a project that came about with some, thanks to some funding from the Knight Foundation last year in 2019, and actually launched in July of last year. So it's an Instagram handle, and it's a gallery that exists on Instagram. And the idea behind that was sort of to just think about, how are people having access to art? What are different ways that we can present it to them that might engage them, perhaps outside of the museum using technology. And rather than, building a new app or a new kind of like page on our website, something that we could do as a museum of our size was utilize the tools that we have at hand, quite literally, the phones that everybody uses every day, and social media. And so why not turn an Instagram handle into an art space? So that's what we did, and we launched last July with an exhibition called Joyous Dystopia that was curated by David Grin of Dada Art. And the idea behind it was really about art made for the digital realm. And so we started with 8 artists whose art was already created for that space. Now, given the times of COVID-19 and coronavirus and being a bit estranged from the physical museum, it's kind of made the space more relevant, and we've also expanded it to encompass artists working in the moving image as Tracy Moffatt is.
Awesome. So can you tell me, art galleries and museums are getting a lot of love on Instagram. People love to post. So what positions BAS Squared differently? Like, how are the artists selected? What's the intention behind how they get on the platform and are curated?
Yeah, so I mean, as it is an extension of the BAS, of the museum, it's still curated in the same way that we curate shows like that are physically in the museum. It starts with kind of learning about the artist and what they do and figuring out if that context makes sense. So with the first exhibition with Joyous Dystopia, we partnered with Dada Editions and David Grin because he really had that background in digital art and art existing in that realm. And so he kind of lent his eye and expertise to choosing those artists. Now that we're working a little bit more internally and we wanted to put something together with the resources that we had at hand, given the pandemic, we looked to our collection. So we are fortunate to have some wonderful video, film, and digital works as part of the BAS's permanent collection. And so I sort of turned to that to see what can we show that has this storytelling, moving image as part of its nature, and then put it onto Instagram in this new way.
And how do you hope people interact with it on Instagram? So like Instagram's got a really interesting, like it's the way the social network performs is different, and then I think others might. So how do you hope people interact?
Right. Well, it was kind of that was one of the things we had to think about when thinking about how is this Instagram gallery going to work, right? Because it's not like when you go into a museum, you can see all the works up at once and on the wall or maybe around you, and you can like experience everything. But the way that Instagram works with the feed, you sort of need to put things out in a more sequential way. So works will come out as posts, and most of them will continue on to Instagram TV because they're a longer form, and they exist in the grid of the Instagram account, as if they were maybe walls of the gallery. So it's a little bit of a different experience, and kind of hoping that the artwork might sort of disrupt your feed. You're scrolling through, looking at images of your friends and family and funny videos, and then, like what is this? And perhaps like clicking and taking a longer look, kind of creating that disruption.
Awesome, thank you. I just shared it in the chat for anyone who's curious and hasn't been to it. It is a separate account though, right? From the chat.
Yeah.
So, do they interact?
We definitely point to any new posts and exhibition from our main account. And yeah, if you all who are listening in, please follow at the Bass Squared. We've already posted 3 videos of Tracy's montages, so they'll be helpful for you to kind of like look at and experience that way while we talk if you haven't seen them already.
And you know what, that feels like a good segue here. I'm going to put on. The Bass has provided us with a montage of some of the work. We'll put that on as we talk, so you can kind of ingest and contextualize what we're talking about as we look here. So let me share that. All right. Everyone should see that video playing, I think.
Yeah, I can see it.
Perfect. So can you tell me more about Tracy Moffatt. Tell me about who is she? What's the work? I think as people watch, they'll get some really good context here quickly, and I think it'll help a lot.
Yeah, and like I think that having this video up in the background is perfect because it really can illustrate what she does, obviously, but the full experience is with sound. So I just want to point that out so people can look at it later. So I'm just going to read a bio because Tracy is quite a prolific artist, and we're really happy to have her in our permanent collection. So Tracy Moffatt is an Australian visual artist working in photography, film, and video. Moffatt is known as a powerful visual storyteller, and her work has been shown in over 100 solo exhibitions in Europe, United States, Australia, and beyond. Her films, including Night Cries, A Rural Tragedy of 1989, and Bedevil of 1993, have been screened at the Cannes Film Festival. And Moffatt was the first Australian Indigenous artist to represent Australia for the 2017 Venice Biennale. So Tracy, as you can see and hear, has been making work for quite some time and is really working between the mediums of film and photography and like interweaving them. And the works that we have in our collection are called the Montages, the Full Cut. So this is 8 individual films. Each has a single word title. And this series was created between 1999 and 2015. Most of the films with Tracy's collaborator, Gary Hilberg. And each film, so I'll just read the title so you can get a sense. Lip, 1999, Artist, 2000, Love, 2003, Doomed, 2007, Revolution, 2008, Mother, 2009, Other, 2010, and The Art, 2015. each of these kind of focuses on one theme, such as love or revolution. And kind of, as you can see from the images in the video, pulls from Hollywood and Hollywood films and cinema, as well as TV, to kind of pick out these different tropes relating to each of these themes. So what you're seeing there, I think on the screen right now, is a scene from, or scenes from Mother, which kind of looks at how maternal relationships have been portrayed in Hollywood throughout film history. And Tracy's really great at kind of like taking these images and snippets. Some of these videos have over 200 clips, and kind of mashing them together to highlight, to bring out new narratives. So the films themselves don't really have like a full story that they're telling, but they do have an arc to them. And she really wants the viewer to be able to kind of put their own experience on top of what they're seeing. So it doesn't really imply a resolution or anything like that, but as you watch, you might become conscious of your own experiences, and really become aware of how these industries of film and TV have influenced the way that we visualize these different tropes, such as the mothers in our lives, or what disaster and what doomed looks like, or what love looks like. So some of them are quite, most of them are quite comical at points, but others, you know, they really, while also bringing out more like tenuous subjects such as domestic violence, race relations, and kind of how those are exaggerated and exacerbated through these genres. So we thought, you know, we have all 8 of these montages. Perhaps this would be an opportunity to share them in a new way. And so we were able to get in touch with the artist and ask her permission to show them on Bass Square, because they've never been shown in this context before.
So this is a question that comes from the audience, and not that I want to deviate too much, but
Yeah.
you just said something. We got permission from the artist to air this. How does she deal with the copyright issues of taking pop culture and you know, things that are not say public domain typically?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, and I think she's definitely an artist who's engaging with appropriation and kind of pushing the line of copyright. She doesn't own the copyright to these films, so perhaps that's why they've never been shown on these platforms before. Generally, they're in the exhibition museum context, because in that way they've been, you know, the way that fair use works is that they've been manipulated enough to kind of distort them from their original setting. So we are sort of opening that up a bit with this presentation. However, I think, you know, these unprecedented times come for some experimental ways of viewing artwork. So she acknowledges that she doesn't own the copyright, but we're just pushing the boundaries a little bit.
Awesome, thank you. And that's a
Yeah.
great question, Sarah. It kind of touches upon what we'll talk about later, but just the use of pop culture gifs, references, memes, and like how they just get absorbed into society, but they're copywritten. Everything about, you know, the things we steal on the internet are copywritten at some source. It becomes more difficult than a Hollywood film to defend when it starts getting put down the chain. But I just think it's fascinating.
Yeah.
This work.
Well, and I think it's interesting, you know, this series, this body of work, Tracy started it in 1999, you know, right at the advent of social media. But really, I think the style, the kind of like quick cuts and, you know, piling together these very specific moments within films and TV really communicate in the way that we communicate now, like you said, with memes and GIFs, really like quick snippets of images that become communication, and they're really, I think, more relevant than ever for us, for the broader, you know, the broader audience.
Definitely. And I'm curious about how did you choose to present this for Bass Squared? And you referenced that the Bass has a ton of great works in the collection. especially the digital stuff, how do you go about thinking like this is the right thing for this moment? I'm just curious about the thought process that you landed here with Tracy's work.
Yeah, I think it was a combination of many things. I mean, you know, this video collection that we have as part of our permanent collection, which was gifted by Cricket and Marty Taplin, the works, you know, span periods of time in which the technology, you know, exists, from video cassettes to DVDs to CDs to MP4s. So sometimes, and as we were already working from home, it's a matter of, you know, what do we have access to? But in particular, I immediately thought of Tracy's work, because these montages really pull from the everyday, in particular Doomed, which is another video that isn't posted yet on Bass Squared, but will be soon. This is a work that you know, really feels like it's of this moment. It's different clips from disaster scenes throughout cinema history. So you have something from Twister, The Day After Tomorrow, Titanic, really like speaking to the like calamity that it feels like we're experiencing right now. So I really thought of that. I thought of that video or that film immediately, and I thought, okay, we have actually access to this full suite of the montages. You know, if we can get in touch with the artist and get her blessing, would that, perhaps that would be interesting for people to see right now. You know, it's a little bit comical, it's a little bit recognizable with the references to pop culture, and a little, you know, some dark topics, but still a little bit of that humor that I think might be appreciated in this moment.
Awesome, I appreciate that context. This is kind of a side question here to this.
Yeah.
Because we're experiencing these montages in a digital format now on Instagram and things like that, how do you suggest that a guest of the museum, when they're in the physical space, experience video art? I'm a visual artist, and I struggle sometimes with that moment of like walking into the dark room and kind of doing. How would you suggest that we do that?
Oh, in terms of like how to, when you're coming into the museum and seeing a video work, how to approach that?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's tough. Sometimes, you know, I'll admit, you know, I'll walk into a gallery or another museum and not fully be able to have the attention span to watch a full video work. It takes dedication, of course. So go in with, you know, an open mind. It's okay if you don't want to stay for the full thing. I think in these cases, you know, if something piques your interest, maybe take a look and take another lap of the gallery and see what other, if it's a group show or if it's a solo presentation of the artist's work, maybe see what else is in the space and maybe revisit it if you're drawn back. And as a, you know, museum professional, perhaps it's just me, but I always love just like peeking at the label or any text about the work. And just, even if I don't read it fully there, I've amassed quite a collection of just like explanations of what I'm seeing, and I try and revisit them later. And oftentimes I take a lot of photos of what I see, and so I'll be revisiting that later and say, oh yeah, okay, I need to look this up. But I think you know, be gentle with yourself and how you want to experience the work. I mean, if you're tempted to come back and spend some more time, then I think something good is happening.
Awesome. And so taking off that, Tracy, I would presume, created these pieces of work for a space for people to interact with. How did you go about approaching her to do this digitally on Instagram? What was that process like?
Yeah.
And in the new context that you're setting it?
Well, we were so lucky because Tracy was incredibly generous. Just sort of wrote to her and presented this as an idea that Bass Squared is something that has existed, and given that the museum is closed at the moment, we're really looking at ways that we can open the virtual museum, which we've done now with Bass Squared, but we first launched our education programs. and our camps and such other things. So we kind of explain what the context was and acknowledge that, you know, we know that this isn't the traditional intent for how to show your work, but would you consider this new context? And she was very generous with saying, yes, please, you know, of course, show it at the museum when you can, but, you know, please definitely show it on Instagram and Basque Squared if you'd like. So it was very easy, and we're really thankful for that, because it can be quite complicated, of course, and I completely understand if she had perhaps not been comfortable with that. So we were lucky.
And so what, she said yes.
Yeah.
What were the next challenges in presenting this work in Basque Squared? How did that work?
Yeah, so I mean, the first things that come with creating an exhibition, which generally the process of creating an exhibition takes many months, even years, you know, is putting together the checklist. In this case, we knew it was the 8 works that we wanted to show, but also making sure how we were thinking about posting them, you know, the logistics of posting on Instagram, you know, is there a certain time of day that we want to do this so that people see it? When do we want to start? Also getting down to like, when do we have this virtual opening is something that we had to think about. It's things that feel so simple and like just unconscious, but you know, you really have to think about them when you're rethinking how to make an exhibition happen. So of course, usually at an opening, everything is up in the galleries, but in this case, we've posted 3 videos, but there's still more to come, and that's due to the nature of the platform. So, you know, you have to try and maintain some semblances of how we would do things in the museum, but also be flexible.
I think, is this some of the doom right here we're seeing?
Yeah.
I used to love these films, and now I never want to see another disaster film after this.
Right? Yeah, I think that's definitely, well, there's many films from like the late 90s, early aughts that felt so real but far away when I saw them at that time. And now it's like, wow, a lot of this is just too real.
Yeah.
But it's great. I think that the way that these works function is that she's just inundating us with these images in a way that you can maybe feel overwhelmed, but then see through that and perhaps like process something new or laugh a little bit. It's okay. Independence Day, that's great.
Yeah, I remember that seeing that in theaters. But
Yeah.
So can you tell me more about how Tracy Moffatt's using the pop culture, the Hollywood tropes, kind of to discuss society at large? You know, it seems there's obviously themes here.
Yeah.
And using pop culture seems like a very deliberate thing. Can you tell me more about that?
Right. So, I mean, as I mentioned, she's always worked between film and photography and kind of wanting to integrate in perhaps like familiar narratives or themes. And I think with these works, you know, she's really pinpointing certain aspects of the way that we exist, you know, love, disaster, doom, also the tropes of being an artist and creating artwork, and digging into those. I think pulling from pop culture is a way to, you know, like is something that people can understand and immediately feel like they're connected to, you know, as we can't help but be pulled into watching the video playing once we recognize something that we've seen, right? Even I find myself looking at things and I'm like, wait, what was that movie? Or even at the beginning of the video titled Mother, there's just the sound of the character's voice from Psycho, Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho. That's just the first, it's not even a visual, it's just that clip audio. And it has a way of really like pulling you in, like, oh, I know that. So it's that familiarity that I think can engage us and perhaps like illuminate ways that we're sort of unconsciously taking in these various subjects. You know, Lip, the first video in the series specifically is looking at or showing scenes from Hollywood films in which there is a Black maidservant and a white mistress or character. So there's this like subservient, dominant relationship, and it's specifically scenes in which the maid character has a moment of sort of defiance or speaks up to her boss, and sort of highlighting these moments. And I think what Tracy is looking at doing there is just, you know, highlighting what we see every day in these movies, not every day, but and how this might be internalized and how that might influence the way that we act and exist in the world. So I think it's that inundation to kind of hopefully create some sort of revelation.
Awesome. I think that Liam's question in the chat, I think, seems like a good next follow-up to that is, do you know anything about her process and how she's discovering, ingesting, selecting? I'm curious about the pacing and tone, like how she, because a lot of the clips play together so nicely.
Yeah.
Do you have any information on that?
By the way, hi Liam, that's my brother. Yeah, so Tracy, given her background in film and her degree in, you know, she got her BA in visual communication, which I think is really interesting because it really speaks to her way of storytelling and communicating in that really distinct way. And in a way, the way that she's cut them, these kind of like quick jump moments between clips, it's very photographic. So I think that also speaks to the way that she works between both mediums. You know, like you can really like have this freeze frame moment where if you were to just freeze the video, you could kind of look at it as a photograph and surmise what's going on, or you could keep it going and you just see this series of clips. And you know, the process of getting this footage took an incredible amount of time, and calling over lots and lots and lots of visual history. As I said, like I think just one of the films has over 200 clips in it. So this took an incredible amount of time. That's why they were created over 17 years. And she also collaborated with her colleague, Gary Hilberg, who also works in film. And I think that relationship and his experience with Montages, you know, together, they were able to collaborate on getting the right images and moments from these films.
So over the course of 17 years, when did they get released? I don't know what you would say in this context.
Yeah, I think in the year of like the timestamp of the work, so you know 1999 for the first one, like that's when they would have been released. And often I believe all of them were shown within a gallery or museum context. So although some of her other films have been shown at Cannes or in a more traditionally film context, these works premiered within like the visual art setting, which is interesting to think about how she kind of like straddles both of those worlds and speaks to her really how deft she is at working with the medium.
And do you know what I'm just curious what year, like I saw like the Doom, do you know what year that was released?
Yeah, 2007.
2007, okay.
Yeah.
Because I'm wondering, it kind of makes me think of how far back she went for the materials, or how much was contemporary, you know, like it is of the what's happening right now in society. But it seems like it's 2007, I think Independence Day was 90, early mid 90s. Maybe? Yeah,
98, 99, I think. Yeah, it's interesting that the last work was in 2015, so it's now already been 5 years. And yet even though she's pulling from, you know, films that are from the 1930s, I'm not sure what the earliest film is, but up through film history, you kind of lose your sense of time in that way, because it's really like disruptive to see everything back to back to back to back to back.
Mm-hmm. I'm noticing too, as I you know, side eye watch it, is there's really interesting moments where, like, normally if you were to say sit down and watch a film from the 40s, 50s and watch a contemporary film, the textures of it, everything about it are different.
Right.
You're able to cut so well that it can jump in time and it feels natural. I think that's incredible to be able to.
Yeah, and she's also able to do that really well with the soundtracks. A lot of times, I mean, a lot of the films have like the dialogue of the original clips included, and that kind of like helps set the relationships and dynamics that she's getting at there. But oftentimes in some of the films, I think, for example, in Other, which is what we see on the screen right now, it's the same kind of like soundtrack throughout the film. So you lose that sense of the difference between the films themselves because you just have the same audio running the whole time.
Yeah, I guess we're gonna have to tune back in to the Bass Squared.
Yes.
To see these with that
context. All
context.
of that is to say, go to the Bass Squared.
Let's see here real quick. I'll come back to that question in a minute from Anne. But I'm curious, or what struck me when we first started talking about doing this with the new Tropic and the Bass Museum, and I got to preview the work. Immediately it spoke to me in kind of the contemporary GIF meme culture. It's GIF, by the way, not GIF. I will fight you over that. For anyone in the audience who wants to say GIF.
I'm with you on GIF. So.
Okay, it is declared. It is GIF. The work just spoke to me in that way where, you know, there's themes, you know, if you search a GIF, and I know everyone now is working virtually, and if you're on Slack, you can hit, you know, integration with GIF, Giphy, and you pull up a word and it cycles through a whole bunch of different examples of that word. Right. And to me, this was just like, you know, the godmother version of it. Like, let's play upon themes and what that looks like.
Right, exactly. I mean, I think that distills down to this way of communicating that is really like these seconds or just like moments that she's been able to extract from the films, and that's how we communicate. You know, so I have some chat and other chains that are just like a constant exchange of memes and videos, and not much actual text or dialogue. I think we're more and more becoming a culture that communicates in that way, and I think working in the arts has been interesting to see that that transition or like that kind of come about. But it's certainly a fun way. I think maybe more effective in some ways.
This is not, you know, this is more of my own little soapbox, but I always thought, you know, there's always jokes about like 1984 and people's language will get slimmed down. What I think I'm finding is I'm replacing language with GIFs, where it's like, how do I feel about this? Here's a GIF, and it's like a pop culture, and you instantly get the emotion where it's like a clip from Ace Ventura or, you know, a reality TV show. And the work here too, it just like reinforces it as you're watching it. You're like, oh, I get this.
Yeah, I think there's like so much more when you're pulling from like what Tracy's doing, when you're pulling from pop culture, you're immediately tapping into things that we already, you know, between people understand. So there's so much more that you can say within that small clip and GIF that you could, you know, say, you could speak out in words, but it's more fun to just reference things.
It is fun. Yeah. And then you also have a relationship to the clip typically, or, oh, that was my parents' favorite movie. I watched that growing up, or what is that? You know, I think that's really, or who's that actor? I've seen him before. Or,
or I love when, you know, and it can happen in what we're seeing too, but like you see different clips and you're like, wait, what did you mean by that? Somebody sent you a GIF and you're not quite sure like what their intention was. It's interesting when the meaning of the original clip or thing or video can be distorted based on the context.
Oh, I like that. Yeah. Before I go too far down pop culture world, we'll share some of the stuff that people submitted when they RSVP'd. So we made our own little Tracy Moffatt inspired slideshow of GIFs on the word distance.
Yes.
And if you want to add any, feel free. You can throw them into the chat, throw some Giphy links in, or GIF links. And one quick question, it looks like from Anne Marie. How about on Bass Squared, are there the like labels and text that help people learn about the artist and the exhibition? How are you going to do that on Instagram? That whole context setting that you get.
That's a great question. So we use the caption portion of the Instagram post to put the what you would traditionally find on the label. Generally, it's a little bit shorter than perhaps you might find in the museum, but no, I think in the museum as well, we try and distill it down to something that you can kind of like take in on a wall label. And so that's the way we've been able to carry that through, because I think beyond knowing like the details of the work, the title, the year, the medium, it's nice to have, it's especially nice on Instagram to have that context of what am I looking at?
Well, what am I looking at now? What is that?
I think this one is from either the art or the artist. Both of those look at, I think this is from the art. The artist looks at the figure of the artist, kind of portrayed through time. That's like a Vito Acconci. And then the art looks at kind of the industry as well, and the creation of artwork. And there is an Andy Warhol reference, and it's pulling from a lot of Hollywood portrayals of artists and art making. And perhaps, you can think about as an artist, what Tracy was thinking about, how that differs from her own practice. And maybe these misconceptions, or the image of the artist that we've created in our own mind. But yeah, these are great.
And then speaking about art, the artists, we have a question from Melissa in the chat, where was, do you think exploring digital art formats on Instagram will impact or change the integrity of the art experience?
That's a good question. Integrity, that's interesting. I think as long as you are honoring, and if you're able to ask the artist, if they're comfortable with showing their work in this way, you can still, and you take the time through the captions and things like this to explain what this is, you can still kind of maintain that intent. As I was saying earlier, the original idea behind Basquared was to show art made for the digital realm. So, we kind of, while we've opened it up in this case, and we might continue to do that, I think continuing that commitment to showing work that's really made for this viewing space and platform might be the best way to kind of maintain that, because it does change the experience. But I think in these times, I think we're really grappling with, what experiences we know and how they're changing and how they might change forever.
Like a gallery opening party.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know about you. I'm enjoying this party.
Right. Yeah. Here's everyone.
So let's see. Do we got any other follow-up questions? Otherwise, I'll share some of these gifts, and we can take any more questions from the audience. That you've filled my curiosity bucket.
Oh, good. I see. I think there's one question from Karen. Will you keep these works on Instagram forever, or is it temporary? That's a good question too. And another thing we had to sort of think through. I think that we will be like an exhibition that opens and closes. The works will be on view for a certain amount of time, and then will be removed, or in the case of Instagram, sort of like archived, so they won't be on view. And we decided to keep the first exhibition, Joyous Dystopia, up through the opening of this new exhibition, so that we can kind of add context to what we're doing. But in general, I think the intention is to open and close shows like we would in the museum. That's a good question.
Got it. Yeah, there's all these like as everyone across the United States and our peers in Miami are going online, there's all these layers of questions to this idea of how do we do stuff like this and have events. And frankly, when we started this conversation, I didn't even consider the context of art and the rights and what you guys do and how you normally deal with that in a space. I think it's fascinating to hear about that.
Yeah.
Do you think there's any immediate limitations to what Basquared can become, as far as what are the things that immediately stop you guys from exhibiting something that you're like, oh, this is a no-go?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that we really are trying to stick to works that like as I was saying, are trying to work with the space, and so perhaps that limits us to moving image work like video, film, or even it could be static images or sound as well, but you might lose like some of that integrity that Melissa was asking about.
Mhm.
You know, something like showing sculpture, a photo of a sculpture, that becomes problematic, I think. And so there are inherent limitations to, if it's rather than just showing images of artwork, being able to show true artworks, I think you have to really think about what that line is. So I think we're limited and we're not really showing 3D works because it's not the real work. But hopefully it's broad enough that we can keep going.
I like that. You have your lane that you know what it is,
Yeah,
what fast square it is, and what
right.
people
Because
can expect.
then it's just another Instagram
Yeah.
account.
So what? Before we show some of these silly gifts and images we got and some serious ones, but what should people expect from Bass Squared, and what how should they interact with Bass Squared? And
Well, definitely follow and stay tuned. We'll be posting the rest of the montages over the next week, and then probably in a few more weeks or in a month or so, we'll be launching another exhibition of work of an artist who's in our collection. It's Assume Vivid Astrofocus and Ellie Sudbrack. So another sort of artist that we're pulling from the collection and showing a selection of his works too. So stay tuned. We'll be releasing more information about that soon.
awesome, thank you. Let's check this out. Let's see the user submissions, and I haven't shown this to you yet.
Okay,
so
let's
maybe
see.
we can get a critique here.
Oh no.
a kind critique. Let me stop this one, and I will share this screen.
So the idea behind this was to, just for the audience
Participation.
Yeah, just to have an audience participation, and as education and these activities are important to us too, we thought, why not add another element to this that's participatory. So the theme, a la Tracy's montages, we picked one word, and it's distance. So, ooh, that's interesting.
I like it.
Oh, great. Okay, Keith Haring. I love that people are, oh, I thought about this GIF. This GIF is iconic.
I find myself responding with a lot with this one.
Yes, this one has really stood the test of time.
And then when we get out of quarantine, we can reverse it. And it'll be...
Exactly, we can reemerge.
This also feels really relevant, all the people visiting each other.
Oh, that is good. Yeah, I mean, again, with the GIFs, it's all playing off things that we're familiar with. And I think distance is something we're all experiencing right now.
Someone was happy with the distance, it seems.
I think that's from Her. Is that movie?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. He's in love. I love this one because it doesn't seem like far, but it seems like so far at the same time.
Exactly. And I love an art historical reference. Very nice.
Absolutely. This is from someone's other own work that was shared.
Oh,
and I just love this image. There was a whole website of images based on the theme, and this is one I loved. The old Mac window.
Yeah, that's great.
Hand separation.
Thanks, guys, for submitting things. I wasn't sure. I mean, this is all, again, thank you all for participating in this talk. It's hard to know, as we're reinventing a lot of things, it's hard to know how people want to interact and participate, and if they want to go to talks and things like this. So it's all kind of in the experimental phase for many of us.
Absolutely.
Oh, that's a good one. The Office, Jim and Pam reference.
I love this one. I haven't seen this clip, but I love. And we got some reality TV. I'm assuming here. I don't know this show, but.
Oh, I think that's Real Housewives of Atlanta.
You think, or you know?
I might know. Wow, this
is beautiful. staring longingly.
And I think we'll be possibly showing these, like, or showing an amalgamation of these after, as kind of like later on, if anybody wants to keep submitting. Is that right?
Yep. Yeah, we're going to be sharing them out in the new Tropic. So if you're not already a reader, please join us at thenewtropic.com. You can subscribe. If you're already a subscriber and you're interested, please become a member. As you know, advertising is down, so we're trying to build up membership, and we're going to be doing a lot more fun programming like this around the community to engage with what's going on. And then when events come back, we will have a lot of fun events for all our members as well. We'll have to do this in person with the DJ and everything.
A member of the Bath too, if you can.
Absolutely.
If you're not already. And yeah, we'll continue trying to reach across the void towards you.
So someone else submitted this, but I was talking about this earlier. This is like my life before this. We were already a remote company. So.
Right, exactly. So for some people, it's been quite a stark change, and for others, it's not been that different of a transition. But.
And I love memes like this because it's a really random puppet, but apparently it comes from like a children's show. It's a screenshot. They took the right angles, and it became now its own. It has its own thing. And I'm not sure most people know what the show is anymore, but you have this standing up.
I don't think I know what it is.
Someone got political for us.
Oh.
As art does, good art,
Exactly. Well, I think
this is it.
Yeah, I think with that, thank you, Bruce, for indulging our conversation and for partnering with us on this opening, this new version of an opening. Yeah, it's been great.
This has been fun, and I hope if you participated in the audience, please feel free to drop us a note. We'll send a follow-up email, and we'd love feedback. You won't hurt my feelings. I love really good feedback.
Nor mine or ours, yeah.
Let us know how we can get better, what we can do to make this more enjoyable. We might be here for a minute until we can get back and hang out in person. And I'm really excited about what we can do together. Thank you so much, guys.
Okay.
Bye, everyone.
Take care, everyone. Be well.